Jake Paul just came out with a new podcast calling out Logan Paul on his BS. Now I had Logan Paul winning against Dylan Dennis, but now I kind of want to see Dylan Dennis whip the shit out of Logan Paul. To be honest with you, I just want to see somebody just humble his ass. I don't know how. I don't know if he needs an ass whooping. I don't know if Prime needs to go bankrupt, but he just needs an ego check. Because Jake Paul literally said on his new podcast saying, I think Logan Paul's ego is way too high. He cares too much about what the internet thinks. And that's the thing. Logan Paul would do anything to look good in front of the cameras, in front of the internet. It doesn't matter if he needs to belittle Jake Paul. He actually touched on this. Jake Paul kind of touched on this in his podcast. He said, on my own documentary, he belittled him on his own documentary. Think about it. Logan Paul belittled, saying, "Oh yeah, that's the little bro," on Jake Paul's documentary. Who the fuck does that? You're on his documentary and you're talking down on him, saying that you still the older brother. Who the fuck does that shit? Now, why is this happening? Why is it that Jake Paul just recently coming out with this? Or is this breaking point? Did you not see the Nate Diaz versus Jake Paul fight? Jake Paul literally calls out Logan Paul's reaction to him winning. He thought it was fake. He thought the clip was fake. Literally, Logan Paul with a straight face. Like, are you fucking serious? I understand as an older brother that you kind of want to be better than your younger brother. You don't want to seem worse than your younger brother. I understand that. But I don't understand when you belittle him, you still have to give him props on his accomplishments. Okay, just because I'm the older brother and I think that I'm better than my brother at fighting, it doesn't mean I'm gonna belittle him and say, "Oh yeah, everybody's choosing you to fight you because you're worse than me." I would never say some shit like that. And let's bring it back to the podcast that they had on Impulsive. That podcast should have never been released. That podcast was supposed to be a private talk, and then Jeff Wittick was there to make it worse. Like, you don't have that conversation in front of other people. It's a one-on-one, brother-to-brother conversation. It should have never been posted. But now you know how Logan Paul. It's always about him. Now this even goes back to 2017 when they were dropping diss tracks. Literally, Jake Paul said, "Oh yeah, you know what? I'm not gonna tell the internet that you fuck my girl," and then he literally puts it on the diss track. And even Jake Paul's like, "So what the fuck? So I don't have a word, but Logan Paul has a word. What the fuck is this?" And I totally agree. You could tell on his new podcast, Jake Paul's new podcast, he's just tired of it. He didn't even want to talk about it, but it's getting serious now. Now Jake Paul just like, what do I do now? Like, what does he do? What I will do personally is I will let Logan Paul's ego get broken, whether it's losing to Dylan Dennis, where it's either Prime starts losing money, starts going bankrupt. I just wait for it because he's gonna come back. Logan Paul, all he has is his fiance. That's generally the only person that you see Logan Paul around. Maybe KSI, but that's because he has to because of Prime. But you never really see him with anyone. Jake Paul, you could just tell that he's the more mature one. But you also have to understand Logan Paul's perspective. He's already been canceled, so I understand that he's worried that maybe if his image fucks up, he might get canceled again. But that still doesn't make it right to belittle Jake Paul just because he's your younger brother. Now, I'm not gonna lie to you guys. After seeing Jake Paul's new podcast, I kind of feel bad for him. He brought up a story of when he was a kid when he said Logan Paul used to hang out with his friends and he would just let me out. I would have to go on my bike by myself through the city and try to find friends just to find that brother that I always needed. And I kind of felt that. I never want my brother to go out and seek other friends because I'm not there. So it really touched me when Jake Paul paused, when Jake Paul said that.
It's kind of funny and crazy that back then, I think a lot of people could relate to this. I hated Jake Paul. I was kind of favoring Logan. I thought Logan was like the more humble one, the more mature one. Especially since he collabed with the Sidemen and KSI. He's one of the best YouTubers. I'm like, you know what? Look, he actually trying to do business. And I seen Jake Paul as the immature person trying to call everybody out, having the biggest ego. But after watching his new podcast, I kind of see it as the opposite. I kind of feel bad for Jake Paul. If anything, my sympathy is going to Jake Paul, and I'm leaning towards Jake Paul more than Logan Paul in this situation. I'm seeing Logan Paul as that fake brother. I don't know. I think Logan Paul just thinks he's the best and that he needs to take control over every situation. Like Jake Paul even said in that podcast, he has tried to do so many businesses with Logan Paul, and he always rejects him, or he always brings a negativity into it. And even his friends that be hanging out with Jake Paul, they said on the podcast, every single time that you try to bring up a good idea or a good conversation, he always just turns it down. He always just brings something negative into it. And Jake Paul, you could just tell Jake Paul was stressed. And just think about it. If you're in a situation and your brother's not giving in, if your brother doesn't want to start that business, if your brother doesn't want to collaborate with you, just on the internet, he just wants to, talk about you, but not really bring you up in anything else. You can just imagine how stressful it is for Jake Paul that he's trying his best. He's literally out there trying to tell Logan, you know what? Let's come together. Let's put the beef that we have aside of KSI. Let's put that aside and let's come together. Let's start something. Let's try to do something together besides just having beef. And Logan Paul doesn't want anything of it. So you can only imagine how stressful it is to Jake Paul that he's trying and trying everything, but Logan Paul just not giving, not even a little bit of the Logan Paul that he knew back then. Just very depressing and sad for Jake Paul. And this is why I'm saying I feel bad for Jake Paul. And now I'm leaning towards Jake Paul. Obviously, Jake Paul was that cringy YouTuber that no one liked because he was so hated. He thought he was the best. He was so cringy. But now he's changed. I feel like he's the more mature one. A good example of this is when he had beef with Rice Gum. They had diss tracks, this and that, and they became friends with Rice Gum. Like they became cool. It goes to show over the years Jake Paul has matured, and that's why I don't get it. I don't get why people still hate Jake Paul. People saying, "Oh, this situation is fucked up," but I still lean over towards Logan Paul. Logan Paul is just so fake. It's crazy that he could be so fake, not only to his friends, but to his own brother. It's crazy. He already left George Janko. He forgot about George Janko. He disrespected George Janko's beliefs about God, and he took him off the podcast as a co-host, which is already crazy. But now his brother, now he is having beef with his brother, and now he's neglecting everything that Jake Paul's trying to do with him. It makes no sense.